People always imagine border work like it's some slow routine: stamp a passport, check a bag, wave the next car forward. They think it's boring, mechanical, something you could sleepwalk through. But the truth is, a border crossing is like a pressure cooker. Every person who comes up to your booth is carrying a story, a secret, or a problem. And sometimes, in the middle of the night when you're tired, cold, and your brain is fogged from staring at endless documents, one of those stories slams into your life so hard it leaves a scar. My very first shift taught me that. It was 2 in the morning, rain smearing across the windshield of cars as they lined up under the floodlights. A family pulled up, an older man driving, a woman in the passenger seat, and a little boy asleep in the back. I asked for passports. The man handed me 2, his and his wife's. I waited for the child's. He just looked at me blankly and said, "He doesn't have one." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He started explaining, fast, nervous, saying the kid was his grandson, that they were just going for a visit, that the papers were in process. I'd already seen this pattern before in training. Traffickers and smugglers love to disguise their jobs as family road trips. My stomach tightened. I asked the boy simple questions: his name, his parents' names, where he lived. He didn't know the names the man had given me. My partner leaned over and whispered, "This stinks." Now here's the thing, you can't just guess. You can't accuse without proof. But you also can't let a child disappear into the night. The woman started crying, swearing it was her grandson, swearing we were heartless. The man slammed his fist on the dashboard, veins bulging in his neck, yelling about corrupt border guards and how we were ruining lives. All around us, horns blared as other cars waited. The floodlights buzzed. Rain dripped down my collar. My pulse hammered in my ears. I had to decide: let them through and risk sending a child into God knows what, or pull them into secondary inspection and risk humiliating an innocent family. I told them to park to the side. The man's face twisted with fury. He shouted curses in 2 languages, his wife sobbing, the boy silent and confused. We pulled them in, checked databases, called child services. And then the truth spilled out: the boy wasn't theirs. They had forged a story, picked him up from a village with promises of opportunities, and were planning to take him across the border without papers. If we had let them through, that kid would have disappeared forever. I remember standing there afterward, staring at the boy as he clutched the blanket someone gave him, and feeling this mix of relief and horror. Relief that we caught it. Horror at how close it had been. That was the first night I realized border work wasn't about paperwork. It was about people and the ugly things people are capable of when they think nobody is watching. Most nights on the border blur together, headlights stretching into the dark, passports sliding under the glass, the endless rhythm of where are you going? How long will you stay? But every now and then, something breaks the monotony in a way that sticks to your bones forever. One night, near the end of my shift, a man walked up to the pedestrian lane dragging a suitcase so big it looked like it could carry a refrigerator. He was sweating despite the cold, eyes darting around like a hunted animal. I asked the usual questions. His answers came too fast, like he'd rehearsed them in front of a mirror. That always sets off alarms in your gut. I asked him to open the suitcase. He froze. For a full 10 seconds, he just stared at me, his hand gripping the handle so tight his knuckles turned white. Finally, he popped it open. Inside was a mountain of clothes, messy and crammed, like someone had packed in 5 minutes. But something about the way the shirts were stacked was wrong, too stiff, too uniform. I reached in and pulled one out. Underneath the folded layers was another lining, thicker than it should have been. My partner sliced it open with a knife. What spilled out wasn't cash, wasn't drugs. It was pills. Hundreds, maybe thousands, packed in vacuum-sealed bags and hidden between the seams of the clothing. The man's face went pale. He started babbling about medicine for relatives, about helping sick people, about anything he could think of. But the sheer volume told the truth: this wasn't charity. This was smuggling. We called it in, and while we waited for the narcotics team, I watched him shake. He wasn't angry like most smugglers. He wasn't defiant. He looked terrified. I asked him straight, Who are you carrying this for? His eyes flicked to the cameras, then back at me. He whispered, if I tell you, they'll kill me. I'll never forget the way he said it, flat, resigned, like a man already digging his own grave. The pills were seized, the man detained, paperwork filed. On paper it was just another bust, another intercepted attempt for the statistics. But I lay awake that night thinking about him. Was he just another greedy smuggler? Or a desperate pawn forced into it by someone bigger, someone whose shadow never touched the borderline? That's the thing they don't tell you about working the border. The real danger isn't always guns or violence. Sometimes it's standing across from someone who's already lost everything and knowing you're just another wall in front of them. There are nights on the border that don't look dramatic from the outside, but they carve themselves into your memory because of how human and raw they are. One of those nights started with a bus, an old, rattling thing packed with passengers heading west. Buses are always a headache. You've got 40 or 50 people, 40 or 50 passports, 40 or 50 chances that something's off. That night, I was already exhausted when I stepped on board, flashlight in hand, and started the usual routine, passports out. Hold them up. Most passengers were annoyed, rolling their eyes, but they complied. Then I got to a woman in her 30s sitting near the middle. She clutched a baby so tightly I thought she might crush him. I asked for her documents. She handed me hers with a trembling hand. No passport for the baby. My stomach tightened immediately. Where are his papers? I asked. She whispered something I could barely hear over the hum of the bus. He doesn't have them yet. That answer is never good. I pressed. She said she was his aunt, taking him to his parents. But when I asked the baby's name, she stumbled. When I asked the parents' names, she gave me 2 different answers in less than a minute. The whole bus went quiet, 40 pairs of eyes watching me, some annoyed, some suddenly very interested. I signaled my partner outside, and we pulled her off the bus for secondary. She begged the whole way, tears running, saying she was telling the truth, saying we were cruel, saying the baby was sick. And for a moment, I wanted to believe her. I really did. But then we checked her phone. Border officers don't do that lightly, but she was already inconsistent, and the stakes were too high. The messages told the story she wouldn't: contacts arranging pickup, money transfers, coded language. Human trafficking. The baby wasn't her nephew. He was a commodity. My blood went cold reading those texts, the little boy squirming in her arms, completely unaware his life was being bartered. We called child services, called investigators. She went from sobbing to screaming, cursing us, spitting at the ground. The baby was taken into care, safe, but I couldn't get his face out of my head. Hours later, after the reports were filed, I sat in the break room staring at the wall while my coffee went cold. Because the worst part wasn't catching her. The worst part was knowing for everyone we stopped, others slipped through. People think borders are about fences and stamps. They're not. They're about the split-second choices where you either save someone's future or watch it disappear into the dark. Night shifts on the border have a way of breaking you down. The cold seeps into your bones, the floodlights buzz overhead, and every car that rolls up feels like the 100th déjà vu. Most are routine families, truckers, students. But sometimes a face in a car window will change your entire night. One winter evening a black SUV pulled up. The driver rolled down the window, a man in his 40s, expensive suit, the kind of arrogance that sticks to the air around him. He handed over his passport with 2 fingers like he was doing me a favor. I flipped it open. Something felt off immediately, the lamination was bubbled, the hologram shimmered wrong. A fake. A very good one, but still a fake. I asked where he was headed. He smirked, said, business abroad. When I asked what kind of business, he just leaned back and said, you don't need to know. My partner glanced at me, already tensing. I told the man we'd have to run additional checks and asked him to pull aside. That's when his mask slipped. He leaned forward, eyes sharp, and hissed, do you know who I am? Do you know who you're talking to? That line is a red flag every time. The kind of people who say it expect doors to open for them, rules to bend. He tried to flash a government badge, completely unrelated to border authority, probably stolen or counterfeit. Then he tried money, slipping a fat envelope out of his coat. I pushed it back through the window without a word. His smile faltered, turned into something colder. You want trouble? I can make one call. My pulse spiked, but I kept my face flat. I told him again to park to the side. His voice rose, drawing the attention of other drivers, his arrogance dripping into outright threats. Finally, he slammed the car into gear like he was going to bolt through. My partner's hand went to his sidearm, but the man froze when he saw the barriers lowering ahead, steel teeth designed to shred tires. He cursed, slammed the steering wheel, and finally pulled aside. Secondary inspection revealed what he was really carrying: 3 suitcases stuffed with undeclared cash, neatly vacuum-packed, along with forged documents linking him to a web of shell companies. Dirty money, the kind that fuels everything ugly. As officers processed him, he just sat there, silent now, eyes burning holes through me. I thought I'd feel triumph, but instead I felt a chill. Because in his silence there was no fear, just calculation. The look of a man already figuring out how long it would take before someone higher up made a call to wipe his record clean. And that's the hardest part of border work. Not the forgeries, not the threats, not even the bribes. It's staring into the face of power that believes it's untouchable and knowing sometimes it really is. There are some shifts on the border that stay with you not because of violence or action, but because of the silence that follows. It was a quiet weekday morning when an old bus rolled up, the kind held together with rust and hope. The passengers filed out one by one, passports in hand, routine as always. Then came a teenage girl, maybe 16, maybe younger, hard to tell under the layers of makeup. She carried a small backpack, no luggage, no family. Her passport looked legitimate, but something about her eyes caught me, blank, rehearsed, like she was already trained on what to say. I asked the basic questions. Where are you going? Who are you meeting? She rattled off answers too perfectly, like she'd memorized a script. I asked for a phone number of the person waiting. She hesitated, then gave one. I dialed it. A man picked up. When I said I was border control and asked who he was meeting, he hung up without a word. My stomach tightened. I asked her again, and this time her eyes filled with tears. She whispered, he promised me work. He said I'd be a waitress. My partner and I exchanged a look we'd both seen before. This wasn't just a girl traveling alone. This was recruitment. Trafficking. The kind that hides in plain sight, one bus ticket at a time. I pulled her aside, told her she wasn't crossing today. She broke then, sobbing, saying she couldn't go back home, that her family didn't want her, that this was her only chance. And that's what nearly broke me, not the smugglers, not the paperwork, not the threats, but a kid so desperate she believed a stranger with a fake promise was her only way forward. We called social services, filled out the endless reports, did everything by the book. Officially, she was intercepted. Unofficially, I knew she'd probably try again. Maybe next time at another crossing, maybe with different papers, maybe with someone more careful pulling the strings. I went home that night and couldn't sleep, kept seeing her face pressed against the glass as they drove her away, tears cutting lines through her makeup. People think border work is about catching criminals. Sometimes it is. But more often, it's about standing in front of someone's decision, sometimes their last decision, and trying to stop them before they disappear into a story that never makes it to the news. It was the middle of summer, the kind of heat that makes the asphalt shimmer and your uniform stick to your skin. People were irritable, sweating in long lines of cars, windows rolled down, fans blowing weakly. Most just wanted to get through fast. That day I thought the only danger was sunstroke until a beat-up delivery van pulled up. The driver, a man in his 50s with sunken cheeks, handed me his papers. They looked fine. But the smell coming from the back of the van hit me like a wall, sharp, foul, almost chemical. I asked what he was transporting. Food, he said flatly. I asked him to open it. His hands shook on the latch. The second the doors swung open, I had to step back. Inside were cages, dozens of them, stacked high, rattling and screeching. Birds. Exotic ones. Parrots, owls, even something that looked like a falcon with its wings clipped. Some half dead, others panicked, feathers everywhere. The smell was rot mixed with disinfectant. My throat closed. I'd seen drugs, weapons, even people packed into hidden compartments, but this? This was cruelty on another level. My partner gagged behind me. The driver muttered something about selling them at markets, about no harm. But some of those birds were rare species worth thousands on the black market. He wasn't a farmer. He was trafficking living creatures like they were furniture. We pulled him out of the van while he kept swearing that nobody cares about birds. I remember one parrot, bright green but missing half its feathers, staring at me through the bars and repeating in a broken, tired voice, "Help! Help! Help!" Like someone had taught it once, and now it was begging. We called in the environmental unit, vets came, cages were carried off. Some birds didn't make it. The ones that did would end up in sanctuaries, far from the hands that treated them like contraband. But that night I sat at my desk filling out reports with feathers still clinging to my uniform and thought, this job isn't just about borders. It's about everything that slips between them. Not just people or drugs, but pieces of the world, lives stolen from jungles, forests, and seas, all stuffed into vans for profit. People ask me what the worst thing I ever saw on duty was. I don't say the shootouts. I don't say the fake passports. I say the parrot that looked me in the eye and begged for help. Winter nights at the border feel endless. The cold seeps into your bones, every breath burns your lungs, and people in line grow desperate just to get inside where it's warm. That was the night a family arrived in a small hatchback, crammed with belongings. A man, a woman, and 3 children wrapped in blankets. I asked for documents. The father handed his over immediately, passport, visa, all in order. The mother too. But when I asked for the kids' papers, the father's face fell. He whispered, "We don't have them." My stomach sank. I asked where they were headed. "To my brother," he said quickly. "Across the border. Just for safety. Please." His hands were trembling. The kids stared at me with wide, tired eyes. I looked into the car. Suitcases stuffed until the zippers bulged, bags of food, a battered teddy bear lying on the seat. This wasn't a vacation. This was escape. The rules were clear, no documents, no crossing. But rules don't make the night any easier. I asked why the children didn't have passports. The mother broke down, saying they fled too fast, that they left their town in the middle of shelling, that the only reason they made it here was luck. The father grabbed my sleeve, voice breaking, "If you send us back, I don't know if we'll survive." My partner stood stiff beside me, waiting for my call. Around us, cars honked, people muttered impatiently, the line dragging longer in the freezing dark. I felt every pair of eyes on me, but all I saw were those 3 kids clutching their blankets, shivering, silent. Regulations say one thing. Conscience says another. I radioed for my superior, explained the situation. The answer came cold, "Turn them back." No papers, no entry. My throat closed. I stood there frozen while the father pleaded, tears streaking down his face. The mother kissed each child's forehead like it might be the last time. I wanted to scream at the radio, to tell someone higher up to come down and see their faces before giving orders from a warm office. But the barrier lifted, and I had to wave the car away. I'll never forget the sound of that engine pulling off into the dark, the children's eyes still locked on mine. People think border work makes you hard, but it doesn't. It just fills you with ghosts you can't get rid of. Some encounters on the border don't shout danger, they whisper it, and those are the ones that stick in your spine long after. It was a late evening shift, the kind where the line of cars seemed endless, each driver impatient, tapping on the wheel. Then a sleek sedan rolled up, tinted windows, engine humming too smooth for the potholes it just crossed. The driver lowered his window. He was young, maybe late 20s, dressed sharp, cologne strong enough to fight the diesel fumes in the air. He smiled too much. That fake, easy grin people wear when they want you to look anywhere but their eyes. He handed me his passport. Perfect condition, like it had just come off a printer. And maybe it had. The hologram shined, but too much, almost exaggerated. The page edges were stiff, unnatural. I flipped it under the UV light, no watermark. My pulse quickened. I asked where he was going. He leaned back, casual, and said, "Just visiting family." But when I asked the address, he hesitated. When I asked the family's name, he smiled wider. Why so many questions? Isn't this enough? His voice was smooth, but underneath it was something sharp. My partner caught my glance, already uneasy. I told the man we'd need to run additional checks and asked him to pull over. That's when the grin vanished. His eyes went flat, cold, like shutters slamming down. He leaned in closer and whispered, "Do you know what happens to people who make mistakes with me?" My throat went dry. My partner's hand drifted closer to his belt, not for the gun, but ready to hit the alarm. I told the driver firmly to pull aside. He stared at me for a long, heavy second, then laughed softly, rolled the window up, and moved. Secondary inspection opened everything up. The trunk wasn't filled with clothes or gifts. It was filled with documents, dozens of passports, IDs, work permits, all pristine, all fake. He wasn't just a traveler. He was a courier, running identities like merchandise. A ghost factory on wheels. When we cuffed him, he didn't resist. He just smiled again, almost pitying, and said, "You've only delayed things. Nothing stops this business." I remember that line because he said it without anger, without fear. Just certainty. And maybe he was right. Those documents would have sold people new lives, new names, new chances to slip into places unseen. We caught one courier, but somewhere, someone else was already printing more. I still see his smile in my head sometimes. Not because of what we found, but because of how absolutely sure he was that the machine behind him would never stop. Not every loud moment on the border is dark or tragic. Sometimes it's so absurd you don't know whether to laugh or cry, and years later it still feels like a fever dream. One summer afternoon, a beat-up hatchback rolled up, packed to the roof. The driver, an old man with a beard like Santa Claus gone rogue, handed me his passport with a trembling hand. I glanced inside the car. Boxes, bags, and movement. At first I thought it was just the heat haze. Then I realized the car was alive. Literally alive. Feathers poked through gaps in the boxes, and I heard muffled clucking. I asked what he was transporting. He cleared his throat and said, "Dead serious, groceries." My partner raised an eyebrow. I asked him to open the trunk. The second it lifted, chaos erupted. Chickens. Dozens of them, crammed into makeshift cages, flapping like a hurricane, feathers exploding into the air. The man just stood there as if nothing was wrong while me and my partner were suddenly in a scene from a cartoon, trying to keep birds from escaping into the line of cars. Drivers were honking, people laughing, one guy filming the whole disaster on his phone. We finally calmed things down enough to look properly. Hidden under the chickens were bottles, dozens of bottles of high-end alcohol, wrapped in hay to disguise the glass. The chickens were cover, the smuggling trick. If customs asked, he could claim it was just livestock. Meanwhile, the real contraband was stacked neatly beneath. The old man looked at me, completely unfazed, and said, "It's just for a wedding." As if smuggling half a liquor store under live poultry was the most natural thing in the world. We seized everything, documented it, and when I told him he'd face charges, he sighed like I'd just canceled his birthday party. The kicker? For the next week, every time a car pulled up and we heard a cluck, officers would start laughing uncontrollably. And yet, in the middle of the comedy, I couldn't shake the absurdity of it. People will go to any length to beat the system, even if it means stuffing rare whiskey under a pile of angry chickens. To this day, whenever I smell hay, I half expect a bottle of vodka to roll out. People always ask me what finally broke me at the border. Not the smuggling, not the lies, not even the threats. What really sticks are the moments where rules and humanity crash head-on and you have to choose which one you'll betray. My last loud memory came on a foggy dawn shift. A small sedan rolled up, barely running, the engine coughing like it was about to die. Inside was a young mother, no older than 20, with 2 kids in the back seat. They were tiny, wrapped in blankets, cheeks sunken, eyes heavy. She handed me her passport. It was valid. Then I asked for the children's. She froze. Her lip trembled. She admitted she didn't have them. They had been born during the war, she said, in occupied territory. No papers, no records, just her word. Regulations were strict, no documents, no crossing. I'd heard this story before and had turned people back before. But this time, when I looked at those kids, I saw bones pressing through skin. They weren't going on vacation. They were escaping hunger. The woman pleaded, tears streaming, whispering that if I sent them back they wouldn't survive the winter. Behind me my partner murmured, "We can't. Orders are orders." My hand shook as I held the passports. Cars honked behind us, impatient drivers, the whole world moving like nothing was happening while I stood in that fog with 3 lives in my hands. I thought about the manuals, the briefings, the punishments for letting undocumented people through. I thought about the kid in training we lost because he trusted the wrong sob story. My chest burned. I could feel my superior's voice in my head, "The line is the line. You don't bend it." But looking at her, clutching those children like they were her last breath, I knew if I turned them back it would be a death sentence. So I didn't. I waved her through. My partner stared at me like I'd just shot myself in the foot. Maybe I had. Maybe there'd be consequences down the line. But I'll never forget the way she looked at me, like I'd pulled her out of a river she was drowning in. The kids managed a weak smile as the car rolled forward into the fog. I stood there, shaking, knowing I had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Some nights I still wonder if it was the right call. But deep down, I think that's what border work is. It's not just stamps and barriers. It's 1,000 impossible decisions where the rules on the page never match the life in front of you. And once you've lived through enough of them, you realize the border doesn't just separate countries. It separates the person you were before you put on the uniform from the one you become after. And there's no crossing back.